Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Fa'awzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Sadaqallahul azim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the session starting with Surah Al-Qadr, and in these following sessions we'll be looking at, inshallah, one ayah at a time of Surah Al-Qadr. This is a very important surah. Most of its connections and popularity are to do with the month of Ramadan, and it's got a particular theme in it, which is the Laylatul Qadr, the night of Taqdeer, of Qadr, of power, sometimes it's called. And so these 4 or 5 ayahs in the surah are all focused upon this one event or this one blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll be covering this with the different ayat, inshallah, one at a time. And as we go through, we'll look at the different aspects of the Laylatul Qadr that is explained and presented in this surah, inshallah. So, beginning today with Surah Al-Qadr, ayah number 1. I'm going to explain a little bit about what is contained in this, the first of the ayat, inshallah. But before we do that, I'm going to give you the complete surah, inshallah, so that we have the whole overall picture of what the surah and its theme is. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. صدق الله العظيم. 5 ayat, and as I mentioned, in each ayah there is an emphasis and a focus upon the overall theme, which is Laylatul Qadr. So in translation, indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking, indeed we sent it down during the night of decree. And what can make you know what is the night of decree? The night of decree is better than 1,000 months. The angels and the spirit descend therein by permission of their Lord for every matter. Peace it is until the emergence of dawn. So this is one of the standard translations of the surah, and also often mentioned there is always a difficulty translating from any one language to another to try to capture the full essence of the surah and its meaning in English or any other language for that matter. So I'm going to explain a little bit more, obviously, as we go along, but just bear in mind that you may have different translations and we can easily access them, and they tend to help give out a little bit more of the essence that is meant in the Arabic. Although overall, of course, unless and until we study it in the Arabic, it's not going to give us that full flavor. But let's have a look at these ayat as an overall first before I go into the individual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking, I'll say, and he says, indeed, we sent it down during the night of decree. And what can make you know what the night of decree? What is that night of decree? The night of decree obviously being referred to in the Arabic as Laylatul Qadr. The night of decree is better than 1,000 months. The angels and the spirit descend therein by permission of their Lord for every matter. So this every matter is actually referring to this Qadr, the Taqdeer that is going to be apportioned out for everyone on this particular night. Peace it is until the emergence of dawn is actually about the peace that is in through the night until the dawn. So there is a sakina, a sukoon that occurs overnight on this particular night as a result of the various events that are going on, which I'll explain as we go through this surah, inshallah. So that's just a brief overview of the meaning of the surah, and as I'm going to go through it in ayah by ayah, and then I'll sum it up and have a look at some particular aspects of this surah in conclusion on the last ayah, inshallah. So, as a background, we need to understand why this surah was revealed. Obviously, all the surahs had some kind of reason why, especially the short ones, why they were revealed, because they were revealed in whole. The long surahs were revealed in separate sections, and again, each one of those sections, there was a background reason for it. So this surah was revealed after a story that was told by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the Sahaabah. And this story was the story of a man from the Bani Israel who worshipped Allah Ta'ala all through the night and fought in various battles during much of the day to establish justice for people. He was known to be this sort of very heroic, very brave, very noble person, and he was well respected and well known throughout the community of the Bani Israel. But this is something that was particular to him, that he did this. He would worship Allah Ta'ala throughout the night. Now remember, this is the time of the Bani Israel, so the Quran was not revealed at that time. So this is somebody who's going by the Torah at that time from Musa alayhi salam, and he's reciting the Torah as we might do the Quran, and he's understanding it, and he's taking his prayers, his du'as as a part of his ibadah in that night. And he's going through the whole night doing this sort of thing. Then in the daytime, he's out on horseback and he's either engaged in battles where there is good against evil, where somebody's trying to establish justice, and he'll join in and he'll support that cause. Or he may even just literally go to people in places who are oppressed and help them all who are needy and help them out. So this is the sort of thing he was doing, as sort of a mujahada during the day in physical form, and a mujahada during the night in a spiritual form. And this is how he behaved, and he did this for 1,000 months. So when this was told to the Sahaba, they were very impressed by this, very moved by this, the story of this man, and very impressed by his character and by what he was doing and his objectives in life. So the Sahaba then asked how they could also gain such reward. This was the thing that impressed them, how this man did so much, and he was very heroic to do that. And so the Sahaba, it touched them, it touched the heart of their iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their belief, and they wanted to know, how can we be like that? And this surah was then revealed in response to that request, because you have to understand, obviously, that they were told that he was doing this for 1,000 months. So they would have obviously quickly calculated that and realized, well, hang on, that's over 80 years of ibadah, and therefore 80 plus years of reward. How are we going to match that? Because a lot of them had taken their shahada after some years outside of Islam. They'd come to know Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, listened to the Quran, understood the truth had entered their hearts, and they became Sahaabah, they became believers. So this would have been at the age of 30, 40, 50 even. And so they felt, well, most of our life has gone by now. We do not expect to live another 80 plus years to equal this man, but we want to do something. So is there anything that Allah Ta'ala can do for us to give us some kind of opportunity, a fighting chance to equal what this man was doing for in his life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So in response, this Surah Al-Qadr, was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that they would be given a sort of opportunity to try to equal that person in a similar reward. This also tells us what was important to the Sahaba. You see, this is the kind of people they were. They appreciated, they felt immense gratitude to Allah Ta'ala for bringing them out of the darkness that they were in, into the light of Iman, of Islam, of understanding what life and the purpose of life was all about. Prior to that, they were just like most people on earth, drinking and gambling and, you know, the normal things that most people are engaged in at that time and throughout human history, the petty gains of this world, if you like, and the things that materialism. They would run after fame and fortune, women, position, fame as a leader, or power as a leader, authority in the land, all these things, and alcohol, obviously, to while away their time in being drunk. So this was the sorts of state that they were in, and the injustices that were occurring amongst the people as a result of all these kinds of games, because they became very selfish, self-centered, very jealous, very greedy, very competitive in these things, to the extent that people would harm each other, kill each other to be able to gain something over the next person, or they would enslave one another in order to show their prowess. So once they came out of that type of life and became Muslim believers, it was incredible to them that they would look back and say, how did we ever behave like that now that we know the truth? And so they were so grateful, so humbled and in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they had been given this by Allah ta'ala. Now they recognize what life was worth. So and every opportunity they could find, they would try to connect with Allah ta'ala to show their gratitude. So when they heard about this man and what he was doing for Allah ta'ala, it really reached them, it touched them, that this is incredible. They hadn't thought about behaving in this manner and doing so much. So the first thing that came to their minds was, how can we be like that too? How can we also express to Allah our gratitude, just like he did? What can we do? Give us something, Ya Rasulullah. Give us something. Ask Allah Ta'ala, give us something to be able to equate that. So they were expectant of something coming back to them. And then this surah was revealed for them. And it was a joyous thing to them. It was the best news they could have, that this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's response. So now I would like to look at the individual ayat, and I'm going to look at the first ayah in this surah for today, inshallah, for this session. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed, we sent it down during the night of decree. So I want to look at three very important parts in this ayah. In this one ayah, there are three very important points that are being made. And the first of that is in the first opening word, inna. The word inna, which means definitely I, or without doubt I, has a long mad on it. This is usually seen as a weakly thick line that comes on top of the letters in the Arabic from time to time. And it means that you stretch the sound. So we say inna. So this is what the long mad does for it in terms of tajweed. However, this is also the grand and great statement of I. Right, so this is what the statement is. It means that therefore when we make this long mad, it's like in English we would say something like, I am the only one who did such and such. I am so and so. So when people stress the I, this is what this is doing. So in the case of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has every right to, because he is grand and infinitely grand. Whereas the rest of us as human beings, it would be seen as arrogant or conceited to say, I am so and so, I am the one who is such and such. So in the case of, as I say, Allah ta'ala, this is perfectly acceptable and perfectly expected of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he begins the surah with inna, meaning I, and without doubt I. Now the hearts of believers are moved with the signs of Allah ta'ala. So here in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is first and foremost drawing attention to himself, that he's about to reveal to us and bestow upon us blessings from himself. And as the Sahaabah, the believers, would hear these different things at different times in the Quran, that Allah Ta'ala said, I gave you this, I gave you that, their hearts were moved with that. And this is known. And the Quran itself mentions this in another part, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the hearts of believers are moved when the ayah, the signs of Allah Ta'ala, are mentioned to them. So in this case, Allah Ta'ala is beginning with I am, and is about to reveal blessings to them. And the Sahaba were wrapped with attention. What blessing is Allah Ta'ala going to give us in this ayah, in this surah? This is similar now to Surah Fatiha, where again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings attention to himself first and foremost by the beginning of Surah Fatiha. Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws attention to himself, that whatever is in the dunya that we find of goodness or we find of benefit, that we are grateful for, that gives us happiness or joy, that is ultimately a blessing from Allah Ta'ala. No matter who gives it to us, no matter how we earned it, no matter what kind of money we bought it with, no matter how we worked for it, ultimately it is a blessing from Allah Ta'ala that was given to us, and there is where the praise or the gratitude belongs. So Al-Fatiha begins like that. Alhamdulillah. So We see the same thing happening in this surah. Inna, I, calling attention to himself, just as he's calling attention to himself in Surah Fatiha. So whatever blessing we have, it is ultimately from the mercy of Allah Ta'ala, but not everyone shows gratitude for them, for the blessings of Allah Ta'ala. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes it to draw people's attention to him, to remind them to be grateful, as what is coming is going to be a great blessing. But before you get the blessing, remember who it's from, because often human beings, it is a state of human beings that we tend to go for what is given, and we quickly forget, whilst we're engaged in what is given, the blessing, we forget the one who gave us that blessing. So before the blessing is given, Allah Ta'ala draws attention to himself. So in a way saying, remember me as I'm giving this to you. Don't forget about me, because I'm the one who gave this to you. And that's the thing here, which in the Quran, in many instances, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of that, and calls people who are believers people of shukr, people of gratitude, because of the blessings. Because the people of Iman, they don't forget that. They don't forget, whilst they got the blessing, they don't forget the one who blessed them with it. And that's the difference, and distinct difference between believers who are humble and show gratitude to Allah Ta'ala, and those who simply take what Allah has given and forget about where it's come from. And this is a big thing for us actually in life, in the life of this dunya, because many people are like this. Those who are disbelievers are completely like this. But amongst the people of Islam, the Muslims, many of us are also very similar. We take things for granted. And one of the ways we do not show gratitude, is by wasting things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like that we waste things. For example, the wastage of water, the waste of food, the waste of clothing, and so on. And this is showing a lack of gratitude to Allah Ta'ala. Whereas a grateful person is one who uses whatever Allah has given. They use it sparingly, they use it properly, and they use it fully and completely for its purpose. So nothing is wasted. The next part I want to look at in this ayah is anzalnahu. We sent it down. So having drawn attention to himself, Allah Ta'ala now gives us the second important point in this ayah, and the first of the two blessings in this surah. We sent it down. Now, it's interesting that Allah Ta'ala does not name it. It's known what it is. The it in this ayah, in this statement, is the Quran. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using a pronoun. Now, before I go into that, I just want to go into a little bit about the background of the Quran. Originally, the Quran was placed upon what's called the preserved tablet, Allahu al-Mahfuz. And this Lahu al-Mahfuz is a particular place which is known only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those that he may have given that information to, like Jibreel alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is some place which is beyond this universe. It is up in the heavens, somewhere known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and located by the will, the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On this place is this tablet, as we can find a better word for it. It's a place, a form or media upon which the words of the Quran are written out. And this was one of the first events that took place way before the creation of the rest of the heavens and the earth and the universe itself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the first thing, which was the qalam. And then he created this tablet, this media upon which to write. And then he commanded the pen, the qalam, to write. And the pen asked Allah, Ya Allah, what should I write? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then dictated to the pen to write. And it wrote out the decree of all things that were to be created. And part of that was the Quran. And the Quran was written out, as were the other books, the Torah, the Injil, etc. So all of these were written out, and this is called the Lahm al-Mahfuz, which is the preserved tablet. It is a protected place by the angels, and there is where the Quran was originally stored. Now, the whole of that Quran was transcribed from Al-Lahm al-Mahfuz to the lowest heaven, which is called Baytul Izzah, and it was done upon this particular night of decree. On this particular night, 1400 years ago, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded for the Quran to be copied from the Allahul Mahfuz and brought down to the Baytul Izzah on this particular night of decree. So an incredible spiritual event of such great magnitude occurred on this particular night. From there, Jibreel alayhi salam would bring portions of Al-Quran as circumstances required, and they will be brought down to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first of those revelations of Al-Quran happened on this night, whilst Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the cave of Hira. So he happened to be in the cave of Hira, making du'as to Allah Ta'ala. As we know, the background story, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam would go to the cave of Hira. At first, he went for a short time, an hour or two. Then he started extending it over days. And then he started going there for a whole morning or a whole afternoon. And then he started to stay there for a day or 2 days. And then he was there for this 3-day period, which he had never done before. And he was calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making du'as, etc., doing ibadah. And Jibreel alayhi salam was commanded by Allah Ta'ala to bring the first revelation, which was Surah Al-Qadr, and bring that to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave of Hira. And that night when this event took place of Jibreel alayhi salam coming to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the night of decree. On that night, the Quran had descended to Baytul Izzah, and on that night, Jibreel alayhi salam was bringing the first portion of it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave of Hira. So again, a connection of spiritual event, a magnificent spiritual event occurring in the heavens, that the Quran is brought from Lawh al-Mahfuz to the Bayt al-Izzah, the lowest of the heavens, beyond which lower to that is this planet, this world. And from there, the connection to this world is Jibreel alayhi salam taking the first 4 or 5 ayat of Surah Al-Qadr and bringing them down to the earth, to the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave of Hira. So it's all connected from Lawh al-Mahfuz to Bayt al-Izzah to this world, to the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. An incredible event of such spiritual magnificence, and the person to receive this, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his the purest of hearts. So what lessons does this give to us? Indeed, Allah Ta'ala states, indeed, and we, together. Inna, indeed, we, without doubt. Now, this is a double emphasis to show his great favor in sending Al-Quran. Inna anzalnahu. So, inna, indeed, and anzalna, we, the two put together, double emphasis. Allah Ta'ala showing his great favor to us, not to forget this is coming from him. And this is by his mercy and by his decree, by his order, that he is sending down Al-Quran. So this incredible event is happening on this particular night, which Allah Ta'ala tells us about in this opening ayah of Surah Al-Qadr. That indeed I caused this, commanded this event, the descension of Quran from Lawh al-Mahfuz, which has probably been there way before the universe was created. So it's been there for millions of years, throughout all time, before the creation of universe, before the creation of mankind, before the creation of Adam alayhi salam. And from there, for the first time, it descends to the lowest of the heavens, which were all created by Allah Ta'ala. And he brings it to the lowest of the heavens, beyond which, as I say, is this world. And he allows the Quran to settle and become stationary there. And from there, Jibreel alayhi salam takes the ayah down to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah Ta'ala is giving that double emphasis. I commanded this to occur. So the pronoun it, as I say, refers to the Quran, which is itself a great blessing. But the topic is Laylatul Qadr. This is why a pronoun is used, to keep the focus on the latter, on the Laylatul Qadr, because the Quran to the Sahaabah was immense. It was the greatest miracle, the greatest blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the next best thing the Sahaabah had to actually the company of Allah ta'ala himself was the Quran. There could be nothing better. So Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them about something else, which they had actually requested. The idea of this man worshipping Allah ta'ala by night and day in his endeavors for 1,000 months. So Laylatul Qadr was this particular night which was going to be given to them in response to their request. But in that Laylatul Qadr, the event was the Quran. So in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the Quran by referring to it as a pronoun, it, so that the Laylatul Qadr, that event, which was the response to their request, would not be overshadowed, because that's what would happen otherwise. So you see, that's why the Quran is referred to as by a pronoun. It's not mentioned by name, because Allah Ta'ala wants to give the Sahaabah focus upon Laylatul Qadr, which may otherwise be dwarfed or eclipsed by the fact that the Quran is being mentioned and its greatness. The use of a pronoun may allow us also to refer to Al-Quran by its other names. Okay, that's important too, because by referring to the Quran as it and not saying Quran, because by referring to it as Quran, it has a particular understanding, and that is in the name of the Quran, qara'a, which means to recite the Quran. So that which is to be recited, that which is to be given in such beautiful tones that we recite it with our voice in the best way we can, and that's also down to obviously the tajweed of the Quran. But also by referring to it as it by pronoun, we can now look at the Quran in its other names. And yes, the Quran has other names, just like Allah Ta'ala has 99 names revealed in the Quran to us. He has more names now, but those are the names he has revealed to us. So those are the names that we can refer to him by. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself also has various titles, Al-Amin, As-Siddiq, etc. And the Quran has various names or titles. And of them, I'm just looking at 4 here briefly. At some other point, inshallah, we will go through the names of the Quran in more detail. But the Quran is also known as Huda. Huda meaning it is a guide. The Quran is a guide, so it is called the Huda. It guides people out of darkness into light, out of ignorance into knowledge, into awareness. The Quran is also known as Bushra. Bushra means good news. It is good news for the believers. Every time an ayah was revealed or a surah was revealed, it was good news for the believers. Whatever was being said, first of all, the good news was that Allah Ta'ala had spoken and they were the recipients of that speech. So this was important to them, because just as when someone is dear and beloved speaks, whatever they say, the person who's listening, it delights their heart to hear the words from their beloved. So the Sahaabah were like this about Allah Ta'ala. So it delighted their hearts to hear Allah Ta'ala saying something to them. And secondly, the Bushra meant that whatever was said was good news for the Sahaba. It promised them Jannah. It promised them salvation from Jahannam. It promised them justice. It promised them guidance. It promised them increase in their iman, in their development. It promised them rewards. It promised them the closeness to Allah Ta'ala. So all of this and more besides, it gave them laws, Sharia to live by, so that they could have a decent society. So all of this was Bushra. It was good news for them. Nadhir, another name of the Quran, it was a warner. It warned people about what was to come. It warned people about the inevitability of life, that life will end. This isn't all. This isn't everything. In fact, it isn't anything at all. It is just a means by which we gain everything in the Akhirah. So the Quran warned them that their time limit, that there is death. This life will end. And it warned them also of the life of the entire world, not just the individual's life, but the life of this whole world. The Qiyamah would happen and the world would come to an end. It warned them about the coming of the day of judgment, and therefore there will be a justice, a day of justice. It warned them about Jahannam and the punishment of Allah Ta'ala. So all of these things were there, which helped the Sahaba to focus on what was important in life. And finally, the fourth of the aspects of the Quran I want to look at, Nur. The Quran was Nur, so the Sahaba understood that this was something which showed them light in life, spiritual light, so they could understand things. Things were made clear to them. They realized things. They were able to work things out that were of value and worth to them in this life, that got them to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was that kind of a nur in the hearts, a nur from the soul and for the soul. So they benefited from that, from the words of the Quran, was nur in their lives. So this was, for example, we can learn something and we can understand it, but then it can bring about realization. And it was the realization that was the nur. It's when we realize things from what we already know that we have that nur, and the Quran brought that nur for them. The lesson for us in all of this is that the same Quran we have in our hands. It is a huda for us. It is a bushra for us. It is a nadhir for us. It is a nur for us. That same Quran we have that they had. And therefore we have the same benefits offered to us that they had. What we have to understand is that zeal they had, we've got to try to inculcate that in our hearts too for this Quran. The last part of this ayah, Laylatul Qadr. We sent it down during the night of decree. So now we'll look at the third most important point in this ayah, inshallah. The Sahaabah had asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for an equivalence with previous people who had long life and ibadah within that long life. And so they were anticipating a response. They were wondering, what is Allah Ta'ala going to give to us? We've asked, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has accepted it from us. He's made dua to Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala is going to reveal something. What is he going to reveal? So it was going to come to them in the form of a surah. So they had the surah, Surah Al-Qadr. They were wondering, what is it that Allah Ta'ala is going to say to us? Is it going to say, okay, I'll increase your lives by another 80 years? Or is it going to give us an event, something to do this for a week or a month, and I'll give you the same rewards? Is it going to give us an action, a task to do this task, and I'll give you an equivalence? They didn't know, so they were guessing, they were anticipating. And then this surah is revealed and its contents. Another thing that I want to mention while we're at this is Qadr. Qadr also means honor or dignity. Qadr means your taqdeer, your decree in life, but Qadr also means honor or dignity. So on this night, not only are we understanding that we have our decree, our life, and its destiny, its fate, but we are also being given honor in this night. So we are honored with the blessings this night, if we were to take part in that night, if we were to take part by ibadah, by turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by making that mujahada, that effort, that commitment, that sacrifice for however much of the night. Obviously it varies with people and our individual strengths and abilities, and of course our devotion. But however much we do, it is an honoring for us from Allah ta'ala. The night is called of decree because our lives are decreed, the good and bad, the joys and pains. So for every year, from one Laylatul Qadr to the next Laylatul Qadr, from one Ramadan to the next Ramadan, whatever is to befall us from now, a night of decree, to the next night of decree, is given to Jibreel Islam, and that is then given out into the lives of our community. Every one of us, our lives, our particular lives, this year coming, inshallah, that is decreed out. And Allah Ta'ala has decreed the good and the bad, the joys and the pains. And whatever we're going to experience, we're going to experience because it's already written for us. And this is something which is important for us to understand, so that we do not complain, we do not comment in ways that are bad or harmful to us. Often people say, why Allah, why are you doing this to me? Why is this happening to me, etc. Those kind of things. And we do not curse or mock our decree or the events that happen to us. So this is very important for us, that we do not become therefore depressed as well, because people often become depressed with whatever they have in life. But we have to understand it is decreed for us. It is from the wisdom of Allah Ta'ala. It is from the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala, and it is from the mercy of Allah Ta'ala. So whatever bad happens, whatever pains happen, is a part of the mercy of Allah Ta'ala. It is to teach us something. It is to cause us to develop and grow, inshallah. Our choices in life may grant us honor. So going back to the idea of honor, whatever choices we make now for the rest of the year, our decree is going to unfold to us. And that choice may lead us to something of honor, or may lead us to something of disgrace, depending upon whether it is a good choice or a bad choice. That is given to us. And whatever it comes from that choice will then be meeting us as our decree. So we have to be careful about what we do in the year coming now, and make it the best that we can. by making good choices, taking good steps in life, doing the things that honor us, that give us dignity, that bring us close to Allah Ta'ala. Finally, in my reflection, I want for us to look at the fact that our hearts should be moved on reflecting over being given this night by Allah Ta'ala. So, as I said at the beginning of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws attention to himself. Why? Because he doesn't want himself to be forgotten. Yes, it's grand, the Quran, and its beauty, its blessings, its names, and the different things that come from it. It's great, this night, the night of honoring, and the fact that it is our decree for the rest of the year. However, both of those blessings in their entireties come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, we should remember that and remind ourselves of that. And often people, when they're doing the ibadah on the odd nights of Ramadan, they will do the things of Tawbah, and that is important. They will recite the Quran, and that is important. They will make the tahajjud, and that is important. However, we should also maintain within that the shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the gratitude to Allah ta'ala for the blessings that He's given us, for even the very fact that we're actually awake at this night with the struggle that we're making, with the commitment and the sacrifice and the effort and the energy, which is all tawfiq from Allah Ta'ala. We should be grateful just for that. As some of the great shuyukh of the past used to say, that we should be thankful to Allah. We should be thankful to Allah Ta'ala for being allowed to be thankful to Allah Ta'ala. That we should be thankful for the chance to be thankful. This is how deeply they looked upon it. And that's where reflection, spiritual reflection, helps us to understand that and to remember that. We should thank Allah Ta'ala for all the blessings that we have, but we should also step back from that and thank Allah Ta'ala for giving us the opportunity to thank Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. This is part of what is given to us as lessons in this surah with the first ayah. Inshallah, I will discuss the remaining ayah during the course of the next few sessions, inshallah, and we'll complete them, the 5 ayat altogether, inshallah, for this beautiful surah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with its wonderful lessons for us, inshallah, and hopefully we'll be able to benefit from it and from what its blessings are, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.